You'll be able to hear George Kontos. He's nice enough to join us once again here. Obviously, longtime major leaguer who is, nice enough to join us whenever we give him a call. George called us back from his bachelor party, for goodness sakes. Thank you very much, George, for joining us once again. We always appreciate your time. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Looking forward to hopping on a plane tomorrow and come enjoy the festivities of a 10-year reunion.
How cool is that, man? I think you guys are going to be showered with honor and love, and rightfully so. 10 years already. I mean, time flies, does it not?
Oh, man, it goes by so fast. I remember yesterday just seeing some of the clips on Twitter, and with the day approaching on Saturday, just seeing Terrio sliding into home plate, scoring the winning run in Detroit. All the memories kind of come swirling back, and it seems like yesterday, but to your point, 10 years have passed, and it'll be great to see everybody and kind of get to reminisce about how incredible it was what we did that playoff run and win the World Series against the Tigers.
George, how'd you actually get the invitation? Is it like an email? Is it a fancy invitation, like a wedding invitation? Do they send it by carrier pigeon? Like, how special was the actual invitation? Or is it just Larry Bear calling?
Carrier pigeon would have been fantastic. I'd have been floored if that was the way that it came. But I think everything's gone digital now, so they give you an email that's very, very nice and extravagant, and you got to click on the button, and it opens up for you and shows you the card. And it was very extravagant, but in email form.
Who's going to be telling the most stories, and how many of them will be actually true?
I think a lot of people are going to be telling a lot of stories. It's like it's like when you hang out with your high school friends or you hang out with your college friends. Whenever you get together with some of those types of people, you always go back to the time where you formed that bond and you created that relationship with them. So I think that you're going to have a lot of guys telling a lot of stories, and there's going to be a lot of reminiscing, and everything will be at least 75% true, with the 10-year rule of embellishment in effect, I would imagine.
Now, George, is there anyone who over this last decade you've lost, touch with? I mean, that's when teams start to break up, they go their separate ways, life happens, guys get busy, guys get families, guys move all over the place. Is there anyone that you had a really close relationship with, maybe just fell out of touch with, that you're really looking forward to seeing coming up?
To be honest, I can say this kind of happily with a smile on my face, and the answer is no. When you have a team that does what we did, and I know the Giants in that span won 3 of them, but I was a part of 2 of them, and the majority of those teams were similar, if not the same guys. So we've all kept in touch, and when you do something as special as winning a world championship, it's incredible, and you guys are bonded in brotherhood for life. But when you're able to win 3 or 2 of them, you don't really lose touch with those guys. I mean, now with the age of social media and the ability to send a quick text message or to send a quick tweet and follow up on something that someone said, you're always kind of in touch with everybody, whether it's via Twitter, like, Hector Sanchez and I, for example, we go back and forth, and I haven't seen him in a few years, but we talk back and forth on Twitter quite a bit. And one guy that I'm looking very forward to seeing, who was a huge part of our postseason run in 2012, obviously, is Marco Scudero. I haven't seen him, I think, since maybe 2014 in Miami when we were playing the Marlins. So he's a guy who I haven't been as in touch with. So I'm very, very much looking forward to seeing him and reconnecting with him. But everybody else, I'm fortunate enough to be in touch with and have relationships with, which is awesome.
Scudero catching that final out of the NLCS in the rain was just, it was pouring in that game. If that's any other game, if the Cardinals really had a chance to come back in it, I think they would have stopped it. But it was all right, let's just get this sucker in, let's get it done. The Giants are going to go to the World Series. We all know it.
I agree. They would have stopped that game in a heartbeat, but it was close. And you got to give credit to Romo right there for being able to hold the ball in that rain. It is not easy to pitch in the rain, especially when you're spinning sliders as often as he did, just to be able to kind of have that grip and throw it consistently over the plate.
When you guys get together, do you talk much about the current team or the current state of baseball, or is this just sort of a grand nostalgia fest?
I would imagine this is going to be a grand nostalgia fest. I think that guys have gone on in their paths on where they've gone, and I think other than Belt and Crawford and Craw, or I just said Craw, and Romo geez, who else? I think those are the only three guys that are still doing it, if I'm not mistaken, that are still playing actively at the major league level. So I think there's going to be a lot of catching up with guys and hugs and stories and handshakes and laughs and just getting back in touch with one another and just spending some time for one another. And the good thing about it is we get to do it again in a couple years. George
Kontos here on 95.7 The Game. And look, the pandemic left 2020 uncelebrated as the 2010 10-year anniversary. So, it is nice that you guys can do this. And if there's one thing that the Giants, just as an organization, smash out of the ballpark, it is these ceremonies. What they just did with Will Clark was spectacular. When Bruce Bochy was given his grand farewell, that was spectacular. So they always really handle these things perfectly, and I'm sure it'll be a fantastic day. We hope you enjoy it to no end, and we hope you actually get a good baseball game when it's all said and done. That would be a nice way to pay tribute from the 2022 Giants to the 2012 Giants, would be to win a baseball game that day. And George, they've had a little trouble doing that lately. What are they now, 6-14 since the All-Star break? I know that you've done an awful lot of post games, pre and post, over on NBC Sports Bay Area, and you're going to be back when September rolls around once again. I don't know if you're going to be back for a pennant push, that's for sure.
Well, yeah, agreed. It's if the team kind of was even 500 right now since the All-Star break, or you've had some air come out of the sails a little bit with the two series against the Dodgers where they seem just a little bit overmatched. And when you're not playing well, everything seems to compound, and you run into a lineup and a staff like the Dodgers, it kind of puts a little bit of fuel on the fire and makes it seem a little bit worse. But they haven't hit those good winning streaks this season. It seems like as often as they've had those skids where everyone starts to get a little frustrated.
When you have a team like this, where so many guys had career years one year and they win 107, and then they sort of regress back to the general mean and are struggling now, do you look back at a year like last year and say, how did they do that? Or do you look at this year and go, how did this go so bad so quick?
Well, I think to your point, you had a bunch of guys who later in their careers had career years. Everyone was healthy. They did what they were supposed to do. The bullpen came through. The starting pitching was very good. The offense was hitting homers at a record that we've never seen in Oracle Park before. All of those metrics have now reverted back to at least the mean, or have been a little bit worse than what the mean is. You haven't had a healthy team for the most part of the season. You have not had the guys that should be playing at their positions in the lineup every day. Injuries have really plagued them this year. The bullpen seems to be a little bit gassed, and there's 50 games to go, and we're talking about a gassed bullpen, which is really never a good thing. The defense, I think, is what the Giants have always prided themselves on: good pitching, timely hitting, and good defense. And I think it's just blatantly obvious that the defense has not been as good as it needs to be behind a pitching staff that needs them to make plays.
George Kontos here on 95.7 The Game. So, I mean, obviously, starters going deeper into games is a really good way to help a bullpen start to recover. Baseball doesn't even really allow that these days, so I don't know how much you can really lean into that now being the problem. Well, just a whole bunch of complete games in a row is going to make the bullpen get a little bit of a break. That doesn't even happen anymore. Like you said, the defense certainly hasn't helped this entire pitching staff in any way, shape, or form. There are more errors, more extra outs to get in every game it would seem that they played. When it comes to giving a bullpen a day off when you really can't give a bullpen a day off is a tough call, I think, for a manager. Like in San Diego, to me, this was all right, you got to play the Padres like this is your in-season World Series. You need to get these guys. Camilo Duvall should probably come out 3 days in a row. I don't care if the metrics say, well, his arm gets a little tired. Well, then he's only throwing 99 tonight. Could that happen? Do you think that they're being a little bit too careful in the wrong moments?
Well, I always will compliment and applaud a staff for looking out for their players. We had guys like Rags and Boch and Gardy who would always be like, how are you feeling every day? It was, how are you feeling? And my answer was always like, hey, I feel great. If you need me, I'm good to go. This has just been a compounding effect, right? When the starters don't go deeper into games earlier for whatever reason, you're throwing more innings out of the bullpen, more appearances earlier. And one of the things that we, and I mean we and the teams that I was on for the Giants, is we had starting pitchers that would go deep into games. Boch would let them go until it was a feel moment where someone should come in. And when you can buy outings for your bullpen early in the season, that pays dividends in August and September when you're making those playoff pushes, because you're going to have guys who are more fresh, who have thrown less games. I mean, Tyler Rogers, for example, last year threw 80 games with a sub-3. He had a fantastic year. He's having not the same type of year because of the workload last year, I think, plays a big part into it. But I also think that when you see a guy over and over again, and guys are getting more looks at his stuff, you lose a little bit of that unknown factor. The more you see something, the easier it is to hit, regardless of how
unusual arm angles become a little bit more usual.
Exactly. I mean, when you look at some of the guys who have faced him 3 times or less, he has a lot of success against them. Once guys have faced him 4, 5, 6 times, the numbers, all of them that you're looking at statistically, have increased. And what he needs to do is, if there's nothing wrong with the way he locates his stuff, the stuff is the same, the metrics are all the same on his end. I just think that when you see guys over and over again, the pitcher needs to do something to separate himself, to give a different look, to work at a different pitch, because guys are seeing it now. I had that same thing happen to me between 2012 and 2013. I had a very, very good year in 2012, and then 13 guys had seen it. They knew sliders were going to come, and they would foul off really good sliders or take them, spit on them. And then when I made the one that was not quite as good, not quite as sharp, they would hit it. And I went from a 2.5 ERA to a 4.5 ERA. And then you just think, hey, why did that happen? What do I need to do to make the adjustment? But the one thing that you can't control is if you're tired, because when you're tired, you're not as crisp, you don't locate as well, the stuff doesn't come out as well, and that starts from opening day of the season.
We got George Kontos. We're at the top of the hour. We've got to take a real quick station break. I got one more question for you, George, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Welcome, everyone, to 4 o'clock.
You're listening to 95.7 The Game, KGMZ FM in HD1, San Francisco. Always live on the free Odyssey app, if that's what you call living.
I was reading today in The Athletic, it was either Brisbee or it was Andrew Baggerly, about how the Washington Nationals have made more pitching changes among National League teams than the Giants. Only the Nationals. The Giants have made 392 pitching changes. No National League team has thrown relievers on 0 days of rest as often as the Giants. They've done it 85 times this season. The average Major League it's 59, the Major League average. So they've been asking an awful lot of guys. Is it unfair? I mean, it is unfair to ask this, but I'm going to ask you anyways, George. For a guy like Kapler to just go up to, Sam Long or Jelly and just say, look, I know that you guys are very early in your Major League careers here. We're trying to kind of stretch you out and see who you are. So on a day where something goes bad and we got to put you in there for the 4th inning, or in the 5th inning, and we're upside down in this game. It doesn't look like one that we can have. We're just going to ask you to wear it, and we're going to ask you to go 5 innings. And you're finishing this one off basically, whether it's going well or whether it isn't. Is that too much of an ask? Is it too unfair to basically sacrifice one arm to save a bullpen?
I do not think it's within. I'm gonna preface this with within reason. That is not unfair. We're all, when you're a younger player, and regardless of what is said by anybody, there's always a pecking order in a bullpen. There are guys who you want towards the later end of the game, and there are guys who are not lopsided games, but who are not maybe going to throw in the games that are within 3 runs, a safe situation, or down 1 to keep it close. There are just levels of the pecking order of the bullpen. This happened in my career. I can remember it like it was yesterday. Tim Lincecum made a start in 2014. It didn't go very well against the Cincinnati Reds. I threw 4 1/3 innings, and I knew the next day that I was getting optioned. And when I got to the ballpark, Yusmeiro Petit's bag was in there, and I was like, you know what? It's part of the game. I have options. I'm the guy that was going to wear it, and that's just part of the game. And when you ask a pitcher if that's okay, everybody's going to say, yes, I want to do what's best for the team. If I have to wear it today, no problem. I'll do it. Because that's the mentality of a young player and a young pitcher. You want to do whatever you can to make a good impression. And pitch at the big league level or play at the big league level for as long as you can. So that's been a circumstance that has happened forever. There's always going to be a guy that might have to wear it for the benefit of some of the other arms, so you don't have some of the problems that we've just been talking about, guys being gassed out, saving appearances to some of those late inning guys, to not just give them some work to get through a game just because you have to.
George, thank you very much. Always a pleasure to talk to you, man. Have a wonderful time at the reunion. We hope it's a great day for you and everyone.
Thanks a lot, guys. Great chatting.
Thank you so much. George Kontos here on 95.7 The Game.